Hey guys, well, I've hit a extremely major snag that I just didn't notice. My mistake. It's not the end of the world, but it's certainly made this job much bigger. So I have decided to replace the clutch, brand new, while I'm here, and the rear main, and of course the spigot bearing or pilot bearing there. That's all going to get done. The problem is, with the engine where it is, to do the clutch is not an issue. But if you want to go further and take the sandwich plate off, this plate here, you're going to come to grief. Well, let me say in a Mondial anyway, I can't speak for a 308. Problem being, you don't have the clearance because of the chassis here and here. These studs, this one and this one, they come out with the plate. They're connected to the plate, but these studs here, and there's a few of them around, they connect to the block and the plate moves accordingly. And the problem is, if you can see just there, there's no clearance to get them over the stud. So it only comes as far as here, and that bottom main part of the chassis there, and stops. So yeah, bit of a bummer. I didn't notice that, to be truthfully honest. I thought, oh yeah, straightforward, pull that off. No, so I'm gonna have to move the engine to get this out. Now I've got to get it out because it was leaking anyway, and I've also cracked it, as in cracked the seal, not the plate, for God's sake. So either way I'm going to have to take it out, but this is a sort of trial and error thing that happens when you've not done a particular vehicle before. You live and learn. I'm not going to take the engine out, I'm just going to move the engine, hopefully back enough for that to simply clear this. So there's a few things that I've had to do that you wouldn't do if you're just doing a clutch, and that is disconnect water pipes front and back, so the engine can move without putting stress on anything. So that's draining so all the fluids out of this car except clutch fluid and brake fluid now. Also the exhaust, I've removed the exhaust. So that was the easiest place to remove it, was down the bottom corners underneath left and right rear wheel arches. So then the headers can move with the motor. There should be enough clearance for it to move, but once again this is going to be a trial and error as I do it. And of course the engine mounts, I'll get up and I'll struggle as I do that. So engine mounts, taking the screws out of them, so that ring around there should come up and over, and so it needs to come up that far. I'm not going to disconnect the drive shafts as yet. I will if I need to, but I'll see if they move a little bit. Well, obviously I'm not going to be able to push the engine back if I have the drive shafts there. I'll be able to lift it potentially a few inches, but I won't be able to push it back. So it might be that I have to undo the drive shafts as well, so the engine can actually move. I'm not moving any of the fuel lines. This moves up quite a lot, so I don't think there's going to be any stress on the fuel injection lines, but all that's going to be monitored as I go to lift it. I am employing a friend, the help of a friend, family member, to help me do that part, just so I've got two sets of eyes, one on the top and one underneath, so we can, he's fairly experienced with cars, so I trust him, and that way I've just got someone else looking for anything that might bend. So I guess potentially those drive shafts may have to be disconnected at one end at least, potentially so. Anyhow, it's not the end of the world. It's still definitely a bummer, but look, it's just unavoidable. It has to be done. I can't leave it, and it was yeah, I mean, it was going to have to be done anyway, so I might as well, like, you know, while I'm there, I might as well do the job properly and renew all the clutch and everything as well. Pressure plate, everything, the lot, it's all new. So I've ordered it all, now I've just got to wait for the parts. Anyhow, I'll get back to you with the, well, I guess anything in between waiting for the parts, so cleaning parts, that kind of thing. Just let you in on what I've done. Alright, cheers. Okay, well, I've started cleaning up the parts, and I started to clean the transfer case housing. And when I started wiping the inside just very carefully, not to disturb this bearing too much, I noticed this. Can you see that? Yeah. Gee, what could be causing that? Well, we know what could be causing that. The sprocket, or the cog. This sucker here, yeah? Remember earlier, the nut that was on this was loose? So this thing wasn't torqued down properly. So this was able to move outwards against the body of, or should I say the cover, and started scoring in there. So it's kind of a good thing that I'm in here doing all this maintenance, because that could have been potentially catastrophic. Of course, this sprocket or cog has been grinding on there quite substantially. It's made about a millimetre and a half deep gouge in there. It's not going to affect this too much. That's fine. Okay, but what did it do to this? Well, I had a look at it. The first thing I noticed was the heat. See if I can get some better light on it. Can you see right on that very edge? Can you see the heat? See if I can get some better light. That's a bit better there. Can you see that? See the heat damage? So lots of friction. That's got very hot over time. With heat comes cracks. So I had a good look at it, and I did notice there's a couple of small cracks in it here and there. There's one there just above the centre of my thumbnail, right there. These are not cheap. I'm not impressed about this. There's another one there. A lot of force goes through this little cog. Another one there. So it's got 3 cracks in it that I can see. So I'm going to source to see if I can possibly get a good condition second-hand one, or I may have to get a brand new one. I'm umming about putting this back in. Yeah, I really don't know. I might even drill a couple little holes there to stop the crack from going any further. But yeah, you can see the heat right on the edge there, down there. You can see the heat staining. Not good, not good. The cracks aren't huge, but they're caused from the friction with the transfer case cover. So I potentially may put this back in, because this, to remove this, it's just simply take this off, or drop the gearbox oil, take this off, and then you put your tool on there and get this off the off the shaft, but and pretty easy to replace. So at this stage, since I've already spent $1,200 Australian on these parts so far, I might just wait and see with this one. But anyhow, I just thought I'd let you know the importance of making sure that that nut is torqued down. Look, if you got one of these cars and you've not been inside here ever, okay, for what it's worth, you can reuse your gearbox oil, so you don't have to buy new gearbox oil, but drain your gearbox oil, take this cover off, and just for the cost of a little bit of new silicone around there, have a look, check that nut. Yeah, we saw the state of that nut. Check it. Remember this one? Yeah, check the torque on it, and even the torque at the top one. The top one seems fine to me on mine, but check the torque, because that's potentially catastrophic. I mean, if that gear goes, if this gear goes, it will take out that gear and potentially the other gear as well. And yeah, could do all sorts of drama, because that there sits on the shaft that goes straight into the gearbox. So I'll just have to, that's going to be like one of the last parts I put back onto the car, so I'm just going to have a big long think about that. But you can see that crack there just below my finger. See? And there. Where are we? So one little crack there, one little crack there, one little crack there. Actually, I just found another one. There's quite a few. Here's about 4 or 5 tiny little cracks. I don't know about putting that back on, but anyhow, I'm going to get the rest of the job done and then tackle that when I get there. Cheers. Hey guys, well, this job has turned into really a major job. It's how to put it, it's been a bit of a nightmare. There's no way you can get the sandwich plate off down here, this plate here. There's no way I can get this off a Mondial past that and that part of the chassis. It just will not. It has to clear this, so it has to come up this high. So that's about a good 10 to 12 inches above its resting point, above its mounts, and to be able to get this plate off. There's a possibility you could take the studs out, and that might make it easier, but look, to be truthfully honest, the studs go all the way back to here, and I'm just not confident. I'd end up with having to buy 10 new studs as well, and then if one snaps, nightmare time. So I've had to bite the bullet and start removing lots of things I haven't shown, you know, like oil lines here, and which they would have had to been done anyway because that's part of the plate. But you know, just spark plug leads, distributors, caps taken off, undoing all various hoses and so on. I've removed the header tank, anything that's connecting the engine to the body of the car. I've undone all the engine mounts. That was done anyway the other day because the idea was to raise the engine a little bit and try and clear that. It just can't be done. We even twisted the engine and it just wasn't doing the job. We just couldn't get it for about, spacing wise was about an inch is what beat us, which was really frustrating. You might notice frustration in my voice, to be honest, the tone of my voice, a little bit deflated, but I'm determined to get this done. So as you can see, the metering unit is also off the car, should be there, 2 bolts, and then you just undo its ancillaries and the two 13mm locking nuts that go onto each of the injectors. It's just time consuming. It's not a difficult job in a sense, it's just time consuming. This part, what will be difficult is the actual lifting of the engine. I'm still to undo the accelerator cable, which when we lifted it the other day played a real part in causing issues here. I mean, this was stopping the engine from coming up anymore, so I have to work out how to get that off. It looks like there's a lock nut there, so hopefully I can undo that. This should come off, this part should come off, and then that cable should be able to get pulled through here, because it goes through a small hole. If I can get it in shot, it goes through a small hole which is part of the plenum. If I can focus that. Not sure if I can get that in a focus there. But yeah, you can see it there. There's a little, if you follow the wire or the cable down, you can see there's a hole. So that part there won't go through, so that has to be taken off for it to go through. And you need to do that because it's connected to the car as such. Even if you undo it at the throttle right there, that doesn't really make any difference. It's still attached to the car. So I think it's an easier job to undo that than remove the entire intake manifold, which I don't really want to do. I've disconnected the drive shafts from the hubs. That was initially just to try and move the engine with the drive shaft still connected to the car, but I think I'm going to be undoing the drive shafts from the actual engine side as well. And also the gear shaft selector underneath the car needs to be taken out. I've removed the starter motor. I'll most likely need to remove the alternator as well. Most likely. I may be able to just disconnect the alternator. I'll have to see. I'd rather just disconnect it than remove it if I can, but as you can see, it probably would pay to remove the alternator because it could get in the way a little bit. Mind you, that exhaust manifold there, that won't be coming off if I'm moving the car. Moving the engine. Lifting the engine, which obviously has to happen. The muffler is off the car, all the tailpipes at the rear, so basically the rear manifold and muffler on the rear bank are completely removed. You can see down there's no manifold on it there. So it's a big job because it's basically an engine out, but I don't think I'm going to be removing the entire engine, as in, removing it completely from the car. I think it's just a matter of raising it so it gets above that there, that one right there. That's what it needs to clear. So it needs to come up and away, and there's quite a bit of clearance now, and away from this plate down here. So if I get in under this side, you can see it there. It's this area here that needs to be cleared. So it's not a great design. This is obviously an engine out job. So while I'm there, I'll do the rear main and any other bearings or gaskets that are on this side. I think pretty much that's it. It's a big gasket, this sandwich plate. It's a huge gasket for that. So I've disconnected just about everything I can think of. So I'm just looking at removing those drive shafts and yeah, basically getting the engine crane in and trying to give it a lift. I'll try and film what I can as we go, but obviously I've done a bit of work here where I haven't filmed it. That was just because of the circumstances. But I'll try and film what I can, especially when it comes to the lifting of the motor. So anyhow, that's where it's at. So a few ancillaries to take off. I mean, it's just common sense really what to remove, and hopefully the job can be done. So it doesn't have to go back too far. It doesn't have to come out. It only needs to probably raise to about there, and you know, so we're talking, you know, 12 to 14 inches above the plenum where it sits now is where it needs to go. I'm only going to be lifting it to the point where I can take that sandwich plate off, so it's all based on that sandwich plate, because I'm not taking the engine completely away from the car. So anyhow, that's where it's at. Hopefully there's plenty of clearance for the engine to come this way. And there's a little plate there that I could remove, which is not, that's just connected to the water pump. So I'd probably remove this fuel vapor filter before I remove that, because then I don't have to start undoing things that may affect the water pump, tension on the belt and so on. So the engine can come back this way at least. What seems to be probably about 5 or 6 inches. So if it gets raised up, the only thing that I think could potentially be an issue is water pump and this intake here, which I may have to take this off. Possible, because I'm not sure if that distance there from here to here is going to be enough to clear that. But once again, this will be a trial and error thing. But anyhow, that's where I'm at, so I'll get back to you when I've got to the next step. Cheers. Hey guys, well, try as I may, I cannot get my drive shafts off. They're disconnected from the hub. I've just put a couple of bolts back in just to hold it still with the handbrake on. But these ones here, I cannot get them off for the life of me. And you can see here, the boot's in pretty good nick, but check this out. Look at this. Somebody's used wire on that side. Just some old fencing wire. And the other one, a freaking cable tie, or a zip tie, as the Yanks like to call it. Look at that. No wonder that one's spitting out a little bit of grease. Anyway, I have tried everything on these, and when I say everything, well, heat, cold, impact wrench. I even modified this bit. I shortened it so I could fit this little mini impact wrench in there, which worked well. It got in there access wise, no worries. I bought this piece, cost me $15. I didn't want to use one from my set, and it was originally about that long, and I've shortened it down, and it was working well. I mean, it was getting in there and doing a good job in that respect. But this impact wrench, even on full, even on 3, wasn't cutting the mustard. Can't believe how tight these are, and it's the same on both sides. I guess they've never been off since I've had the car, but my God. So at this stage, I'm not going to waste any more time. I've already spent a couple of hours trying to, you know, from driving to the shops to get the parts, and then the tooling and so on, and jinning around. So I'm going to attempt to lift it with those in place, but I'll just disconnect them at the hubs either side, which they've only got just a couple of bolts loosely put in each side at the moment, because just to hold that while I was wrenching on it. And I'm just going to hope that as it lifts, the outer CV joint gets to drop, and the inner CV joint has enough play in it to sort of, you know, drop down enough to give me the clearance for this this sandwich plate. If not, I don't know what I'm going to do to get those drive shafts, those CV joints clear. I have no idea what I can use. Impact wrench not working. Heat, cold, that's not working. These they're like they're welded. It's just unbelievable. They're pretty wet, as you can see, because I've been soaking them in a bit of CRC, a bit of penetrating fluid. So that's my next step, is just to come out each day and give each one of them a dab of penetrating fluid for at least well, I don't know, at least a week or two, a couple of weeks, because I think it'll be a couple of weeks before I literally get this moving. I have to get a crane in, which I've got hold of, but I'm just hoping I've got the clearance. Should do. Not easy to get a crane over the boot, so I'm hoping the boom is long enough to fit in over the boot. And yes, might be a matter. I'm in a small shed, so small garage, as you can see. It's not big at all. It's only just enough space for a few toolboxes and to get down the sides. So I'm wondering that the wheels may have to go back on, and it may have to go outside into the driveway to have some clearance up here. But hopefully it's fairly high, but the door takes away all that. So when the door comes up, I lose a lot of my height, but I don't need a lot of height because we're not taking the engine completely out of the car. I just need it to raise about a foot, as I was saying, about 12 inches or 15 inches up, and then we should be able to get it. So by looking at it, it needs to come forward and then up, and then just clear this bar here, this chassis piece here. If it can clear that, I'm pretty confident that I could get that off. So anyway, I'm going to work on these oil cooler lines and try and get that one and that one disconnected. At either end, it doesn't matter, whichever one makes it easier. I'm sort of inclined to disconnect the line at the engine rather than disconnect it at the cooler, because if I do any damage to the cooler, you can see the pipes down there. If I do any damage to those, you know, to the cooler, then I'm up for, you know, tidy penny, where I think they'll be a lot more sturdy down there. Right there you can see, right in the centre of shot. Where's my finger? So it's that nut, that grey nut, that's right there, that's the one I need to undo. It's got a sender unit in that one. I'd say that's probably oil temperature sender unit, maybe a yeah, I'd say it's this oil temperature, because I know that one there is the pressure, so possibly maybe it's the oil level sender unit. I'll have to check, but either way it's some kind of sender unit. I'm thinking maybe to take that out first and then undo that grey one, so the brass one first. Where are we? I've lost it. The brass one first in the middle of the screen, and then take that sender out and then undo that grey one. Anyhow, I'll see if I can get a spanner on those and get those off, and get back to you with the next part. fun and games. Cheers. Okay guys, I've got that oil line down here disconnected. Well, I've got it undone anyway. Where are we? There it is, you can see it there. So it's undone. This one here is 27 mil. Okay, I thought it was 28, but it's not. A 28 spanner will not sit on it. Okay, so the sender is 29 mil. 29. Okay, so yeah, some unusual sizes. So I used a crescent to get that one out, and then I put a breaker bar and a socket, a 27 mil socket on that, and broke it open, and it worked well. And then I put a ratchet on it just to finish it off, and I'm pretty sure I can take it off by hand now. So there it is there. Alright, so I'll most likely remove that oil hose pipe, and then possibly put the nut back in it, and then put this back in just to fill the hole. I'm not sure if I can do that, but I'll let you know. I'll be back. Okay, so that's out. There's the nut, and there's the hole for the oil to go through. So I am going to screw that back in, and as you can see, there's a copper washer on the outside and one on the inside, so on either side of the knuckle, so either side of that part there. Just put my finger on it, that there. Okay, so either side of that pipe is a washer. Now just a note, this is a sump plug washer, brand new one I just got out of my kit, and it's exactly right. So it's exactly the same size. It's just a little bit, the flange is a bit bigger there, you can see, but it's the same. It's the same size. So I would recommend, you know, for what these are worth, just put two brand new ones on there. So I think I'll order a few more of those. I think I've got a couple in my kit. This is my spare parts kit. So I think I've got a couple to renew that. So that won't be an issue. I might put them on there now. Take these ones off. There's another one, sorry. He's kind of a little bit on there, a little bit harder, that one there, so I'll need two hands. Maybe not. There we go. So there's the old ones. And I'll put these ones on now, just so I know I've got new ones on there. As you can see, they go on. It's just making it past the thread, that one there. And they fit nicely on there. So at least they're renewed. These are old. Generally don't really use crush washers again. You can if it's in really good nick, but I'm just going to put them in there for now. I know they're old, you can tell. And I'm going to slot that back in, and I'm going to put that back into there. And this one also has a crush washer. Don't know what size that is. I'm not sure. I do have a small one that's brand new. Maybe I'm in luck. Maybe it's the right size. It looks about a millimetre bigger. Yeah, you can see there. See there, it just doesn't, you know, if it sits like that, then it's going to end up being a gap. You don't want that, it's still too much, so a little bit of a gap is okay. So if it's off, it still clears, or should I say it still covers the that bottom flange. But that one there, if it's not on right, you can see there, see that gap down the bottom? That's not good. Yeah, a little bit off is okay as long as it's making a seal, but if that's off, if I tighten that and it's like that, that's not going to work. So think I'll order a couple of these as well. I'll get their size, work that out. While I'm here, I might as well just give it a quick idea of what it is. I'm holding the camera in my hand, sorry. So my camera work is shocking. But if you know me, you'll know that I'm not the world's best cameraman and nothing I do is scripted. That's why there's a lot of ums when I'm talking, because none of it's scripted. So there we go there. And we're reading 30, what's it, no, sorry, not 30, 16 and a bit. Just over 16 mil on the vernier gauge, so that's sort of what we're looking for. Funny enough, the washer sizes on this car are weird, unusual. So yeah, I think I'll go to Superformance for these washers. So I'll make a note, I'll take that washer with me and order that. So I'll stick those in, and that's the next job done. See you soon. Okay, for the top one, just there in the center of the screen, right there above my finger, you can get to it pretty easily with an ring spanner. I did say it was 27 mil, those, which they are, and this is 28. Look, I just did a naughty and just took a chance and used my 28 on it, and it cracked it, so it worked. I don't necessarily recommend doing that, but look, I can't get a socket in there, and I've got a 27 mil socket, but I don't have a 27 mil spanner. I go up to 22, and then I skip to 28, and then I skip to 32. That's what my spanner. I bought this spanner believing that these two were actually 28s, but they're not. They're 27s, but this 28 cracked it. I don't suggest that you do that necessarily. I'm just letting you know that I did it and it worked for me. So yeah, if you find yourself in a bind, 28's still going to work. But anyhow, I'm going to undo that one there and pull that off, and then the oil lines are free. Another job completed. And if you look down there where I put that sender unit back in, notice I've got a couple of bits of foam going left and right through that, because it's got those two holes in it, two journals I guess for the oil, and I just wanted to fill them up just so nothing, no washers or anything can just accidentally pop in through that hole and then into somewhere I don't want them to go into. I mean, lots of gears and stuff and so on, I think, just behind that plate. So yeah, not something that I want a washer to fall down into. So good idea to plug them up, and I'll most likely do something similar at the top here. Okay, I'll get that done. Okay guys, when undoing the top one, make sure you siphon all the oil out of here, otherwise it will pour out and you'll need to put something here, otherwise you'll get a lot of oil and potentially oil underneath the plenum, underneath the intake manifolds. Ask me how I know. Anyhow, sometimes even my own stupidity surprises me. Well, actually it doesn't surprise me, to be honest. So just a few plugs here just to make sure keep those areas clean. You probably don't need these ones because this just goes straight into here anyway. But anyhow, oil out of here, because all of the oil that's in here will flow out, and there's the line there, and potentially any oil in this pipe as well, I guess, because it's high up, so gravity will work in its favour, and you'll get oil everywhere. I didn't get it everywhere, but I got a bit of spillage under here, and down here as I was undoing it. I didn't take it completely off. I mean, I saw idiots saw it first before it got too bad, but I'm letting you know so you don't copy this idiot. Okay, cool. Right, so they're done. So that's another win. What else to do? The gear selector is still attached. I reattached it, but that's going to have to come undone. It's pretty much it, I think. I think just suss out the alternator now, make sure that's either got room to move or I need to disconnect it. Taking off your metering unit is really not that difficult. You simply have these two bolts here, or nuts, that you take off, and it's on a pivot, so it actually can pivot up off that rest there, okay, which feels a bit hard, so I might renew some rubber on that. Might even look at ordering a new one of those. Might as well protect the bottom of the unit because there would be a bit of vibration there. So it's just disconnect them, and there's a couple ancillaries to it. One mounted here, and the cold start injector there. So that's 2 bolts there, 2 nuts there, 2 there, a plug and a plug for each of those. Pretty easy. Mark them so you know what's going on. And then it's simply just I removed this to get a bit more access to this particular injector, and then it's 2 13mm, pretty sure they're 13mm open end spanners, and just crack them all open. Crack the ones at the back, and you should have a bracket down here as well that you need to undo, just there, 10mm. And yeah, the whole unit just basically just comes away. I'm ashamed I didn't film that. I don't know why, to be honest, I didn't film it. I could have filmed it, and I honestly don't know why I didn't. But look, it really is pretty simple, and if you're a bit daunted about taking off your fuel injection, oh sorry, and there's an inlet. So I took this side off. This is the inlet to the metering unit. I took it off at this end, only because I didn't have as much clearance here to get this one off. Yeah, you see it's tight between those two. Here I've got a bit more clearance. Here I didn't have the clearance, so I decided the outlet I took off at this end, and the inlet I took off at this end. But I'd marked them a long time ago with little arrows telling me which is inlet, which is outlet, and I've also done that with a paint pen as well, just as a double check. And as you can see, mine are covered in a bit of a plastic sheath. That was mainly because I noticed ages ago they were rubbing here, and I didn't want them to ruin this cam belt cover or the actual braided lines. So I put a little bit of that on there just to protect them, and some rubber here on this one, so when it meets here, there's that little bit of rubber. It's rubbing on the rubber rather than the metal to metal. And I think I'm going to be doing this little jobby here to the oil lines on the other side, because remember I was showing you one of them was touching the body there. So yeah, I think I'll be covering them as well, and you don't have to like cover them completely. As you can see here, I've just used some I don't know what you call this, but it's just tubing for wires and so on, and it doesn't have to cover the whole thing as long as it's protecting the majority of it, any surface that's going to touch. Okay, well that's done. Let's see what's next. Cheers. Okay guys, just continuing the disconnection from the motor, should I say the motor from the chassis, just all the wires and so on. There's a lead here, I've marked it, as you can see, E1, needs to be unplugged here. This bolt needs to come out, so I need to disconnect this because I'm not 100% sure what that's connected to. I think you may not have to undo that bolt. Just be careful if you do, because it's connected to your brake lines. I actually don't think you do. It's just difficult to see in there, so I'm going to do a bit of filming in there. Connected to the alternator and starter motor cables. So I need to investigate that a little bit more, just to make sure that that's not attached in any way, because I certainly don't want to be pulling it away from here. But I've marked these up. This goes to your ECUs just here. Goes into that one. I've marked it E2, E1 and E2. And there's the E1 there. Better to disconnect as many things as possible, obviously. So I'm just not 100% sure about this. I need to get in there and find out a little bit more, but don't, point being, I'm sort of filming this so I can see how it's all going together myself, but also, you know, don't forget that kind of thing. Disconnect your ECUs and so on. Okay, and I think I'm just about 99% there. So hopefully, yeah, hopefully it won't be too long. Looks like there's a bit of a leak was coming from there, from the rear main, I think. I'm not 100% sure. There was a lot of grease and dirt and so on, but shops don't clean the inside of these plates and so on, and inside of the bell housing, unless you ask them, and they get charged a tidy penny. So I haven't made mine spotless, but I've certainly cleaned it up. Okay, so soon I will have an engine lift here, and with the help of a friend we're going to attempt to lift the engine so it clears this frame here, so it comes above that, and I'll just get up, yeah, so it clears this frame here, so the plate, as I was talking about earlier. Anyhow, it carries on. I shall be back. Okay, I'm back, and I'm disconnecting the accelerator cable. It's one of the last things I'm going to have to do, hopefully. There's a little nut underneath the other side of the casting of the intake manifold. You need to undo that little, so it's a bolt. You'll feel it if you put your hand in underneath there, and then you can simply pull that through once you take this little nut off the off that end there. Once you take that off, I dare say put it back on, so you can see there it's out. However, it's not completely clear, so yeah, you just pull it through and pull it through the back, and there it is. I dare say put that nut back on straight away. And of course adjustment will have to be done once you put all that back in. There it is. Okay, groovy. Cheers.